Alright, you lot, welcome back. We've got some new Necromunda goodness to look at. We've got some Escher Matriarchs and Phyrr Cats. Phyrr Cats? Fire Cats? Fire sounds right, doesn't it? Fire sounds okay. We'll go with fire. We've got to check them out, and immediately I'm reminded as to just how fun House Escher is. It's such a strong look. The hair on the Gang Queen there is absolutely mental. Love that. It's the biggest mohawk I think I've ever seen. Does it still count as a mohawk? Yeah, it's pretty much a mohawk, isn't it? Either way, it's absolutely colossal. Massive. The bolter looks incredible. I love the carving that's gone into like the body of it. And then you got the skull over the top that kind of looks like the skull of one of the cats that they're wandering around with. That feels somewhat harsh, but you know what? We'll let them off. Very similar motif that we've got hanging off the haft of the power axe there. Very cool power axe as well. I like that a lot, actually. That, like, I don't know what you would call it. The gap in the blade just adds a little something. I couldn't really tell you what it is, but I like it. It looks cool. I realise it's just because of the angle at which the photo's been taken for these two miniatures, but it does kind of look like she's got hooves just for a second. I think because you've got that like metal platform on the boot, especially on the left leg, it's like the definition of like going from shin to ankle to foot isn't quite there, so it looks a little bit off, but that is just the angle of it. I think rotate her slightly, wouldn't look anything like that, would be absolutely fine. I like the fact that there is like an armoured greave on one side, whereas it stayed pretty plain on the other, outside of the studs on the leather. Overall, solid. Also, the stock on the bolter, really nice. Like it. Looks good. That first cat looks mental. Pretty hideous, if we're being honest. Like, that is not a lovable face, in my opinion. Also, really weird layout for the teeth. It looks like the two incisors are just pointed forwards, as opposed to being, like, useful for biting, which is a choice. I do like that big, long mane that goes down the back, though, that stretches all the way down the back of the animal, all the way down the tail. That's quite a cool look. I will say for a second, I thought that there was a, like, raptor-esque, like, toe claw going on, but I think it's just the angle on it that makes it look a bit like that. That would be a choice. An interesting choice. Not one that I think I'd be fully on board with, but I don't think that's what's going on. Does look threatening, though. Does look threatening. And, you know, threatening's good. I really like the plasma gun there. That looks very cool. Having the, like, sideways grip is kind of neat. That's a fun variant. That's a very fun variant of that weapon. The breastplate looks awesome. It being, like, combined with bare arms that's a strong look. Again, very, very strong stylistically. I do like the pose on the other one. I'm not sure what type of gun that is, I'll be honest. I can't remember. I'm sure at some point I will have read the name of it, but right now it just looks threatening and somewhat odd in that I think we've got like an actual... Have we got a magazine in there? But then the barrel is so much like thinner or slimmer than we normally see. Even for like stubbers and heavy stubbers and the like. That feels like a very like... The diameter on the barrel is not that big, which is kind of a rarity in 40k, it feels like. Or at least the wider 40k universe of which Necromunda is obviously a part, you know what I mean. The pose on that lass is very strong, like that a lot, and also, again, two excellent hairstyles. Brilliantly done. And I think right now, the colour combinations that have been chosen for the hair, really good. I was wondering how long it would take to get to a massive two-handed melee weapon, and it didn't take that long, although I will say that's relatively reserved. I mean, it's a good-looking hammer, like it a lot, but it's not truly colossal, although I will say I think the overall pose for that lash right there is pretty damn solid. Like, that is very much a power pose, I think. So far, there's been a nice mix of different, like, customized parts across each model, so they all have a bit of their own, like, personality within the wider umbrella of the Escher look. I like the fact that you do have these little bits of asymmetry, just these little choices that make it feel like each one of them is their own thing, as opposed to just a repeat of like the same armor over and over again. I think when it comes to skirmish games in particular, you know, when you're talking like lower model count, those differences really, really add up. When you've got a massive, tabletop full of Space Marines, each one of them being slightly different is nice, but you don't tend to pick up on those differences quite as much when you're only looking at like 10, 12 models total. It's one of the things that bugs me about Imperial Knights and about Mega Gargants, the fact that the legs are always the same unless you do a bit of chopping. Yeah, the top might be different, the weapons may be different, but the pose tends to be relatively static and similar from one model to the next, and it's really noticeable on those, especially since they're so big. And I think part of that is not just down to the size, it is down to the fact that you've only got a few models on the table. Anyway, that was a bit rambly. We've got a plasma pistol. I like the fact that both the plasma gun and plasma pistol have got the older style, like barrels on them. I like that a lot. Makes them feel more like sort of traded relics that have been handed down or rediscovered than, the newer stuff that Cool's handing out like candy. The fact that this lass is wearing a Fire Cat's hide as a cloak is, it'll get the Fire Cats to stay in line, I guess. I do like the claw hand as well. That's very fun. That's quite nice. An extremely subtle nod to the animal that is currently being worn as a coat. We've got another Fire Cat, and we've got someone with a bow. Look, I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I don't think it really makes a particularly huge amount of sense to have people wandering around with bows in this particular setting. But for some reason, undeniably, it is kind of cool. Why that is, I couldn't tell you. I suppose it's borderline silent, so if you're doing a bit of assassinating, that sort of thing, that's definitely a plus. If you're taking that to a fight where someone's got a bolter, though, I would probably prefer to be the person with the bolter than the bow and arrow. Plus, there is a small flaw when it comes to making models with bows, which is that the strings are kind of difficult to do because having a big old thick string looks kind of off, but at the same time, it doesn't look quite right when there's nothing. That is just a personal preference on my part. It bugs me when you can't see the string, but at the same time, can you imagine trying to, clip out something that would need to be proportionally the right size for a bowstring on something of that size? It would just be ridiculous. It would snap in transit. It would never work. But at the same time, every time I see one, I'm like, it would look cool if there was a string, though. With that said, it is a fun bow. I do like the bow. The pose is fun. I like that a lot. Also, just a small thing, the quiver being at the hip instead of on the back. I feel like everyone does the quiver on the back. It actually just being on the hip there, that's quite a pleasant change in many ways. Now, I have to be honest, that cat looks a little bit derpy to me. I think those front-facing teeth are really, really messing with my view as to what these are or how they work. But again, we've got the big long mane right down the spinal column there, which looks really, really cool. So there is that. And we've got some cheeky close-ups of the back of a few of them. That pose on the archer is really good. I do like that a lot. Also, having a little cutout in the quiver so you can see the arrowheads. They didn't need to do that, but I actually quite like that as a fun little detail. I also like that we've got the detail of the armor plating down the back of the coat that the Gang Queen's wearing. That's very fun. Just a little thing, but yeah, adds quite a lot, I think. Anyway, there we go. A new Escher gang. They look fantastic. They always do. Necromunda stays winning, as you would expect. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things. I'll see you for the next one.